Welcome to The Explainer. So today we're going to talk about self-help, but probably not the kind you're thinking of. Forget the gurus for a second. What if the best advice came from math? Yeah, I know, but stick with me. We're going to look at how a few big ideas from mathematics can actually give us a way better toolkit for dealing with our, messy, complicated lives.
You know the drill, right? We're just constantly bombarded with all this advice on how to live. One minute it's lean in. Then it's stand up straight.
Oh, and don't forget to not give a fuck.
And then, somehow you have to solve for happy. I mean, it's just this dizzying maze of totally conflicting formulas for success. So, with all that noise, who are you supposed to believe?
But what if the answer isn't just another catchy slogan? What if it's a whole new way of thinking? What if we could actually borrow the logic from math to make better calls, not just on a test, but like in our actual lives?
All right, first up, the self-help maze. The big idea here is to just bust this myth that there's some one-size-fits-all life hack for everything. Because life's just not that simple, right? So instead of searching for some perfect rule, let's look for a better method. Okay, let's get into a scenario. One that's probably a little too real for some of us. It's Amy's first day at a new job. She walks into the bathroom and, she overhears her new colleague, Rachel, say, "That new girl is stupid." Ouch. Now, for most of us, the reaction is instant, right? You're hurt, you're angry, and you immediately decide, okay, Rachel's awful, and this job is gonna suck.
But here's the critical question. How should Amy react? Should that one single comment completely define her opinion of Rachel forever? Well, mathematical thinking actually gives us a really powerful alternative to just making that snap judgment. And that alternative comes from this kind of wild-looking 18th century formula called Bayes' theorem. Okay, I know, this slide looks terrifying. All these P's and symbols, but just ignore the actual formula for a second. Trust me. The idea behind it is actually super simple and honestly pretty profound. It's all about how we update what we believe.
Yeah, this visual really nails the core idea. See, Bayes' theorem isn't about forming an opinion in a flash. It's about updating it. So you start with a baseline belief. Let's say you give Rachel a 50-50 chance of being a nice person. Then you get new data, that nasty comment. Now, instead of just throwing out your old belief and deciding she's 100% evil, you just adjust it. That comment is a piece of evidence, for sure, but it's just one piece. I mean, who knows? Maybe Rachel's having the worst day of her life. The point is, you don't jump to a conclusion. You just slowly, patiently update your view as you get more info.
You know, it's funny, Jane Austen totally got this. In Pride and Prejudice, Elizabeth Bennet tells Mr. Darcy his inability to forgive is a shade in his character. A shade. She doesn't say it's some permanent, unfixable stain. And that's really the essence of good judgment, isn't it? Seeing one event not as the absolute final truth, but just as one data point out of many. It's a kind of intellectual humility.
All right, let's move on. Section 2, finding the signal. This is all about making those big life decisions, because when the stakes are really high, thinking clearly becomes absolutely crucial.
So think about a huge question like, should I quit my job? It is so easy to get completely lost in what we call the noise. Like you have one awful Tuesday where your boss is just a total nightmare, and you're like, that's it, I'm out of here. That's noise. Then Friday rolls around, you have a great team lunch, and you're thinking, maybe this place isn't so bad after all. Guess what? That's also noise. The signal is the real underlying pattern of how you actually feel about your job over the long haul.
So how in the world do you find that signal? Well, this is where something called the confidence equation comes in. And again, don't get hung up on the symbols here. The core idea is simple. The more data you collect, the more confident you can be that you've found the real signal and you're not just reacting to all that random noise.
And you can turn this into a super practical tool, like right now. For the next month, try this. Rate every single workday on a scale of 1 to 5 stars. 1 star, a total disaster. 5 stars, an amazing day. Then, at the end of the 30 days, here's the key. You ignore the individual day-to-day ratings, that's the noise. You just look at the overall average. If your average is, say, a 2.1, well, that's a pretty strong signal that you are fundamentally unhappy. But if it's a 4.2, that one horrible Tuesday was just an outlier. See? You're separating your fleeting feelings from the hard facts.
Okay, so this is where it gets really interesting, because this same way of thinking, collecting data to find a hidden truth, it can reveal some incredibly powerful things, not just about our own lives, but about the entire world we live in.
Check this out. A study in Sweden sent out thousands of job applications that were completely identical. The only thing they changed was the name at the top of the resume. And the results were pretty stark. Applications with Swedish-sounding names got 79 callbacks, but the ones with Arab-sounding names, only 43.
And that is the power of statistical thinking. See, an individual hiring manager might say, hey, I'm not biased, and they might totally honestly believe that. But the data reveals a hidden pattern, a signal of discrimination that you just can't see on a case-by-case basis. It completely shifts the conversation away from how I feel to here are the facts.
But, and this is a big but, this incredibly powerful tool has its limits. Think about the famous trolley problem. Okay, scenario 1. A runaway trolley is about to hit 5 people. You can pull a lever to switch it to another track where we'll only hit 1 person. Most people say, yeah, pull the lever. But now, scenario 2. Same trolley, same 5 people. This time, the only way to stop it is to push a large person off a bridge in front of it. Now, the math is exactly the same. Sacrifice 1 life to save 5. But our gut, our moral intuition just screams, no, that's different. And most people say they wouldn't do it.
And this right here reveals the crucial boundary of this whole way of thinking. Equations are fantastic at optimizing for a goal, like, say, saving the most lives possible. They can tell us what is, but they can't tell us what we ought to do. They can't tell us what's morally right. For that, you need something else. You need our values, our humanity, our intuition.
So where does that leave us? What's the big takeaway here? Look, the point isn't to start carrying a calculator around to make all your life choices. It's about building a better mental toolkit for navigating this crazy world.
And what's in that toolkit? Well, a few key things. First, update your opinions. Don't just form them in a flash. Be patient. Second, get good at telling the difference between the signal, the real trend, and all that distracting noise. Third, use data to actually challenge your own assumptions, to find those hidden truths. And last but not least, remember that logic is an amazing tool, but it doesn't have all the answers.
In the end, this mathematical way of thinking, it's not another magic formula for a perfect life. Not at all. It's a framework for just understanding things better. It pushes us toward patience, humility, and most of all, curiosity. And it all starts by asking yourself a really simple but really powerful question about the things you believe most strongly. What's one assumption you have about your life that you've never actually stopped to test?